Welcome back to another episode of the Best You Podcast. Today we have an incredibly inspiring guest, Olympic gold medalist and world record holding swimmer, Cullen Jones. In this episode, Cullen shares the dedication and preparation it took to reach the pinnacle of success in swimming. He talks about his training routine, the mental challenges he faced, and the famous 4x100 meter freestyle relay where the American team made a remarkable comeback against the French, and that team included Michael Phelps. You'll also learn how Cullen maintained confidence during tough times and his tips for overcoming challenges. By the end of this episode, you're going to have a deeper understanding of what it takes to achieve greatness and how to apply these principles to your own life. Before we dive in, don't forget to hit the follow button on the Apple Podcast app or on Spotify. And if you're watching on YouTube, make sure you hit like and subscribe below. All right, what's up, everybody, and welcome back to the Best You Podcast. Today, I am super excited to be joined by an Olympic gold medalist, a two-time Olympic gold medalist, a world record holder, the one and only Cullen Jones. Cullen, really appreciate you joining today, man. I'm super excited to dive into a number of different things today, kind of like what it took to be an Olympian, some of the mindset things, like how to maintain confidence amidst rocky roads, and then also really excited to talk a little bit about Goldfish Swim School and how important it is for children to be getting swimming lessons at a really young age. So really excited to touch a few different topics today, but I want to start off from the Olympic side of things. I'm in a little bit, I want to get into how you got into swimming, because that's a really fascinating and somewhat ironic story as well. But I want to kind of dive into, like, at what point in your swimming career did you think that, like, this might be something that you actually did long term? Like, at what point did you think, man, I'm pretty darn good, like Olympics could be in my future, this might be something that's not just something I do through high school and something I do through college and then move on from it, but it actually might be something that might be kind of like what I dedicate my life to?
Nick, I mean, I don't think I ever had that thought. I think the whole time that I was swimming, I was always just trying to beat the person next to me. I've just been extremely competitive my entire life and too stubborn to quit. And I think that that's something that's really, really important when it comes to every aspect of life, especially when it comes to goals and things that you want to do. You have to be relentless with it. Big fan of Tim Grover and every person that he's worked with. When it comes to Kobe, comes to Jordan, there seems to be a common theme, and it's be relentless with how you approach your goals. And so for me, it was always I just wanted to beat the person next to me. It was never, especially as a kid, I mean, that mountain to think to go to the Olympics was just something that was inconceivable to me even as a teenager. I was getting 6th and 7th place, man. I was not winning from the beginning. And so I was just relentlessly trying to get a little bit better, a little bit better, a little bit better.
That's awesome. You mentioned Tim Grover. Did you have any specific coaches that you feel like you learned the most from, or that you got the most out of, like, and like really encouraged you and made you believe in yourself?
Yeah, I mean, I've had some amazing coaches. I've had some coaches that, I came home crying when I was a kid, talking to my mom and my dad, like, I don't get it, I don't get it. And thankfully, my dad was a just unbelievable basketball player and was being drafted by the Knicks. It just didn't work out, but he had so much experience with different coaches. He taught me at a young age, it doesn't matter what you think about your coach, take the positive out of it, because every coach, for the most part, especially when it comes to your field, because I'm going to say field, I'm not going to just say sport, because you can have coaches in life too. You can have coaches in business. Any one of them that is mentoring you, you can take something from them. It doesn't always have to be great, and it's not always wrapped in the package that you want, but most of the time you can pull something and extrapolate something from them. So I would say that I've had some supreme coaches in my life. I would say David Marsh was a big coach for me, especially when it came to being a pro. But I've had coaches like, gentleman by the name of Ed Nessel or Lou Petrozello that, I learned so much from them. I don't think that just because I made the Olympics under David, that was the only coach that really did it. I feel like I learned from all of them.
Gotcha. That's awesome. I love what you said. It doesn't matter what you think about your coach, take the positive from it, because I think that so many people have coaches that obviously they like, but then at some point people are going to run into coaches in their life that they don't necessarily have the strongest connection with. Let's just put it lightly like that. And oftentimes they just complain and they don't take anything away from it. And then it can be oftentimes one of the things that gets people to quit or move in a different direction. So I absolutely love that mindset towards coaches for sure. Going to going to the Olympic trials is super slim odds, let alone going to the Olympics, let alone competing in a final event, let alone winning an actual gold medal. Like, what were the things that were able to keep your belief in yourself high, even when the odds at all those things were really low?
I think a lot of it came to preparation. I always talk to a lot of young swimmers now as a role model, and I say, how many times have you done those flip turns? How many times have you done those starts? How many times have you practiced that speech over and over and over again when it came to your science project? Like, how many times have you practiced it? If you haven't practiced it, that's why you're nervous. You're gonna have variables that happen. Like, I couldn't tell you how many times my goggles flipped or my cap ripped or my suit ripped. Those are things that are not controllable. But the things that I can control is I can control what I had for breakfast. I can control, the practices that I went to. And so I had to learn at a much later stage in my career, or at least I'll say I accepted the knowledge of knowing that practice was so important late in my career. So I try to pass it on that, you practice to try to be perfect, because when you're racing, it's not going to be perfect.
Yeah. That's awesome. Yeah, preparation is absolutely huge, and definitely all areas of life. I'm a health and fitness trainer, a nutrition coach, and one of the things that I feel like I get people to do is a lot of people prepare for like work meetings and prepare for other things, but they don't prepare about, okay, when am I going to get my workouts in this week? When am I going to be going to the grocery store? When am I going to be doing meal prep? But it applies to everything. So absolutely love that. Like, actually, practically though. Is there a particular time, the first Olympics you competed in was 2008 in Beijing, I think, if I have that right, but you did obviously like the world championships and stuff leading up to that. Is there like actually a time though when, I'm sure with these specific races that you're doing with your freestyle races, you can kind of like see your time and see how that stacks up to other people around the country and other people around the world. Was there like a particular moment, like after a race, where you're like, damn, I actually could actually make it to the Olympics? Was there ever like a moment like that?
So it wasn't even a moment that it kind of hit me. It was more, well, it happened all culminated at the same time. I touched the wall and I had gone, someone who I looked up to, Gary Hall Jr., I had gone his Olympic trial cut at World Championships or World University Games. And so it was my first international meet. I dropped over half a second in the 50. And at the same time, a legendary coach, Dick Jokums, came up to me and said, hey, kid. And he's got this really raspy voice. And he's like, hey, kid, I think you got something here. Maybe you can be an Olympian. And that was the first time I had heard it. Like, I was 21 years old. I think Phelps heard it at birth, but I heard it at 21. I mean, it was much later for me. So one of the things that it really it hit me all at once, because I looked at the time and I recognized it immediately. I won a 21, I think, 2 at the time. And that was at that time Gary Hall Jr.'s like trial cut. And I was like, oh my God, he won in 96. He won in 2000. He won in 2004. Like, oh my God, like I'm on to something here. And it really, and I think that's really important to say to every listener that's listening. I wasn't like this instant gratification of touching something and immediately being great at it. That was not me. I was not immediately great at swimming. I loved it. And it wasn't until I was 21. The amount of kids that I talk to that are like 11, 12, that are like, oh my God, I'm not good at swimming immediately. And it's like, guys, you have a long road in any sport to try to be the best. Now, I know that we have young phenoms like, um, uh, Katie Ledecky and Elizabeth Beisel and Reagan Smith and Missy Franklin that did it at like 16. I get it. I understand that. But for the majority of us, it takes a little bit more time. You have your phenoms, but be patient.
Yeah, I love it. I love that. We're not too far removed from the Paris Olympics here, and I know that one of the things that always is so remarkable about a lot of the sports, but especially swimming, is how attention to detail you have to be. I mean, the margin of error is so small, especially when you're competing at the highest of levels. I mean, these people are touching 0.01 seconds difference to dictate their whole legacy and stuff like that. Just kind of riff on the importance of, when you're practicing, the importance of the attention to the detail, and not just and like just the focus of that.
Yeah, you said it perfectly. I think one of the things that really stuck with me is one of the things that my coach used to say is brain off, brain on. And so, like, we would do warm up and he'd be like, all right, brain off. Like, so you're just kind of going through the motions. You're just warming up to get the blood flowing and you're doing stuff. But then he would be like, all right, now it's brain on. And so there's a lot of practices that he would say, and I say it to now my swimmers, it's like, this might not be physically hard, but if you do this properly, you're going to be mentally exhausted, because it's like standing on a tightrope. Like, you're trying to do everything as perfect as possible. After a while, yeah, you might not be moving on that tightrope, but your legs are going to get tired. You're going to get tired of like standing there and trying to be perfect. And if you're trying to be perfect at practice, you're trying to be perfect at, that paper that you're writing or that speech you're going to give, no matter what it is, the more and more you try to be perfect, the better the outcome will be towards the end. Now, will we ever be perfect? No. But could we and should we strive for it? Absolutely. Every turn that I did, I tried to do it perfectly. Because, Nick, let me tell you, in that world record relay, don't ask me what I was thinking. I don't know. I was just, the only thing that was going in my head was go, 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 go. I wasn't thinking about the start, my stroke, my turn. All that work was done before. And so that's why I think preparation is so important, and not just preparation for preparation's sake. Prepare to try to be perfect. Because as I said before, it never goes perfectly, and that's okay. But the better you are to be prepared to try to be as perfect as possible, the better the outcome.
No doubt about it. I mean, so I do a little motivational speaking myself as well. And like, when you rehearse and you're practicing a speech, there are so many small things that are outside of what you actually say. Like the pauses that you take, how you say particular things, who you're looking at, the sequence of things, and all of those tiny details in the preparation are super, super, super important to have your brain on for, to use your terminology. But then when you actually go deliver it, you're not thinking about those things as much, hopefully, because you've prepared and rehearsed enough to where it just becomes second nature, and you can actually maybe be even a little brain off when you're actually, going out there and competing, if you will.
Right. And that's what people talk about, flow state. It's not, flow state is, you're essentially doing exactly what you practice, and you're in a state of just being present while actually doing what you practiced. Like, even if, like you said in the speech, perfect. I practiced my speech, or like I wrote it and then I practiced it over and over and over again. And I learned from a mentor of mine, the best way to actually learn timing is to like watch comedians. Comedians are unbelievable at the craft of timing, and like where to drop a joke, when to pull back, when to allow the crowd to laugh, And so I learned over, 20 years of doing public speaking, trying to practice those. And to your point, you can practice all of that, but you don't know if someone's going to heckle you. You don't know if someone's going to come out. You don't know if you're going to pause. All of these things can happen, but the more prepared you are, the more like prepared you are for that situation to occur. And when it does, you don't freeze.
Yeah, that's so good. That's so good. Tell us a little bit about what practically like training looked like for the years leading into the first Olympics that you competed into, going to Beijing. I know that, it's so crazy that you basically train and practice, on the outside, you train and practice 4 years for one thing, but you're doing, you're competing in other things leading up to that. So it's not necessarily just the one thing, but to an extent, it all culminates to that point. But just talk to us a little bit about like what the training regimen looked like for, the years leading into that first Olympics, and maybe if it looked the same or different going into the second Olympics, like the frequency, like how did that all break down?
Yeah. So I would say the majority of swimmers do about doubles twice a week. So it's usually about 8 practices. Monday's a single, double on Tuesday, Wednesday single, double Thursday, Friday's a single, Saturday's a single. And
Mm.
so I think that's what's so crazy about when you look at what Phelps did. He swam on Sundays as well. So you're talking about he was doing a full extra practice compared to everyone else for 3 years leading up to 2008. Does everyone need to do that? No. If you want to be the GOAT, seems like you might need to do that. But for the rest of us, it's usually 8 practices. The practices themselves are about 2 hours. That's in water alone. But then you also have to supplement, weight training and, rehab to try to make sure that you're coming back to the practice as good as, you possibly can after being broken down from the past one. So all of these things add up. And I remember someone asking me, they were like, well, how many hours do you put into swimming? I was like, into swimming in a week? They're like, yeah, like 40 hours. It's a full-time job. And so, you've got a lot of great swimmers out there like Nick Fink, who made the Olympics, got medals, and had a full day job while doing all of this, which still blows my mind. But for the majority of us that are training for the Olympic Games, it's a full-time job.
Yeah. And actually, to kind of just expand on that, are most people, do they have jobs on the side? Because it's one of those things. If you haven't necessarily made it in the sport, I'm very ignorant. I don't really know what the money making opportunities are if you haven't made a name for yourself yet or whatnot. So what does that look like for a lot of people?
So for a lot of people, yeah, they have a 9 to 5 job, or a part-time job of some sort to try to help supplement. We are one of 3 countries that in the world that don't pay our athletes for representing us representing the country in the Olympics. You have some people that you get a medal, you're put on money in your country, and then you have us that heck, I got taxed when I came back from the placement, and it kind of goes against all fibers of my being. We're representing the country. How are you going to tax us on a gold medal that we got for the country? But for those that do not have the ability to kind of get to that level yet to have a full contract, a lot of swimmers have part-time jobs because they're not finding it. They can't find it other places. If you're lucky enough to find sponsors, then you can go get after a sponsor and they can help subsidize some of that the charges for daily life. But for the most part, thankfully, most swimmers that are on the Olympic team are signed, or at least have some kind of deal with a brand.
Yeah, gotcha. Leading into the preparation for this interview, I watched a few different times the 4x100 freestyle relay from 2008 with you, Michael Phelps, Jason Lezak, and Garrett Weber-Gale. And one of the things that the announcer of it was saying was he had run this race through his mind a number of times, and no matter which way he thought about it, the French were just definitely going to win, and that was you guys were just underdogs. So what was y'all's team mindset going into that race? Did you guys think you had a chance? Did you have a specific strategy that you felt like was going to work, or what was the team mindset going into that race?
The gentleman's name, who is a big brother, who's an Olympic brother, but also just a mentor to me, is Rowdy Gaines. He's the voice of the Olympics when it comes to swimming. And yes, he said, there's no way that on paper, I've done it a million times. There's no way that they can win. And so to this day, we make fun of him when we see Rowdy, and Rowdy's just like, yeah, okay, I got that one wrong. But he's like, but that was a miracle. I was like, yeah, it was a miracle. For us, it was, we never doubted ourselves, Nick. It's hard to say that we really had words before that were like, okay, guys, we're going to get hyped up. I think that's what everyone expected. But there's something about being a part of Team USA, and especially about that group that we were with. Words didn't need to be spoken. We were going to go out there and we were going to win. There was no question in our minds well, silver will be great. No. No, we're going for gold. And you can say a lot of that is even though he at the time was already only 23, the leadership of Michael, it was Garrett, Jason, who has been on the 2000 team, the 2004 team, but there was no conversation about how are we going to do it. Nope. We just had 4 guys that were like-minded, that believed there was no way we could lose. It's a strange thing, and to this day, when we actually are all together, we just kind of look at each other, and it's like, wow, there was such a special bond around that that one moment has like cemented us for life. And before it, there was no conversation, zero conversation about like, well, you're going to need to go this time, and you're going to need to. We're going out there to win. That's it.
That's awesome.
That's awesome. Yeah, I mean, hey, when each person believes in the other person, that's all that you need. I'm curious. Do you guys hear the outside noise of going in knowing that you're the underdog, and even Ratty Gaines doesn't think you guys can win? Like, do you guys hear that or know that going into it?
Yeah, we did, especially when the tabloids were pushing out like all, yes, I said tabloids, everybody. This is 2008. There were still newspapers coming out, but but there was headlines basically saying, you know, we are here to crush the Americans. Like the French team was saying they were here to crush the Americans. And so we all heard it. It was like the article was actually in our team room just so that we could see it every day leading up. And we used it as fuel. It was, we were motivated. Let's just say it like that. Angry's a hard. No, we were angry. We were like, nah, there's no, you're not going to poke the bear. Don't do that. And so we were just motivated. We had one of the really cool moments was we got a letter from our armed forces in 2008. We were still very much so looking for Osama bin Laden at the time after the 9/11 attacks. And so we were really worried even just going to the Olympics just because it was very fresh still for the US. And we ended up getting a flag from our armed forces that said, you guys go out there, kick butt for Team USA, you inspire us. And we had that flag in our team room and there wasn't one dry eye. I mean, we were all just like, you want to see like grown people crying. It was like our armed forces say that we're their heroes. There was no way we were going to lose. So we had the article. They said they were there to crush the Americans. And then we had a flag from our armed forces and they were both sitting next to each other in our team room. Like there was no way. We were like, we're going out here and we're winning. We're winning for the US.
Yeah. That's so cool. That's so cool. It's so funny actually. When I'm actually talking to people about their fitness goals, I have them start off by coming up with what their why is and like building out their why. And I talk about how there's different kinds of motivation. There's like figuring out what you want to avoid or like the negative side of motivation. And that's kind of like, listening to the tabloids and like let that fuel you to like work your ass off. But then there's also like, what are you working towards? Who do you want to become? What do you want to achieve? And then the other side of it is like, who are you doing this for? When it comes to health and fitness, so many people that I work with are like, I want to be good role models for my kids. I want to show them what healthy habits looks like, or I want to show my parents maybe what healthy habits looks like. And so when you have those like tangible things or those things that you can have right there in front of you of like, I'm doing this for this person, I'm trying to prove this person wrong, like all those different types of motivation you can leverage to help you perform your best.
Absolutely. I mean, it's like, I'm sure I'm stealing this from someone book I've read, but I call it an anchor point. Like you have to have an anchor point. Like I can say, I want to be whatever, but if you haven't anchored or planned the way how to get to that point, it's going to fall flat. You're not going to be committed when it goes wrong, when something happens. And there's so much of that happens in sport where, someone will say, I want to be the fastest in the world. It's like, okay, cool. So what are you going to do about that? Are you living it every day? Are you going to bed early? Are you eating properly? Are you training? No, I'm just not going to do it today. Now, don't get me wrong. I didn't make every practice. My coach will call me out. I did not make every practice, but he knew exactly when to say, Cullen, it's time. And he would always say I had a boxer's mentality. Like 3 months right before I was about, or 4 months before I was about to race, like a big race, he was like, I've never seen someone so dialed in. But we had to figure out what I needed. I needed time off to be that focused in those 4 months. And so when it came to the preparation, when it came to living that dream, he was like, you need time off to just kind of get your head back. And then you live that dream to a T. Like I would, I was overage, but I would not drink. I would focus on going to bed early. I was coming to practice early. He would be like looking over and I'm still doing starts just to try to nail the perfect start. And he's like, okay, he's locked in. And so I think when you have that type of work ethic and you're so focused on winning, when you get to an Olympic Games, when you get to the arena that you are, your choice arena, and things start to pop and happen, like the French team saying they're there to crush the Americans, like Michael hearing, oh my God, you're going for 8 gold medals. What if you don't? Like all of these different things were in our head happening all at the same time. But at the same, we were focused. There was the anchor point that it wasn't Michael's 8. It wasn't Cullen wants to get his first gold medal. The anchor point was Team USA. The anchor point was we were doing this for our country. And that is what made us go far and beyond what we could have even expected or what Rowdy could do on his paper.
Yeah, that's awesome.
That's awesome. I love the anchor point analogy or idea. That's great. That's great. You know, I think a lot of people have shaky levels of confidence because they place their confidence on the results that they have in life. And it's like, no matter how good you are at something, whether or not you're the best in the world at something, you're not always going to be getting the results or the outcomes that you want. Like even if you're the Olympian, you're not always going to be winning. How are you able to, like, I'm sure there were different times throughout your career where you weren't always performing or hitting the times that you were wanting to hit. So what are the things that you kind of like backed your confidence on so that even when the results or the outcomes were not as you wanted them, you were able to maintain at least somewhat stable levels of confidence?
I think understanding that other people are going through the same thing. I think so many of us think that like, oh my God, this is Michael Phelps, that he never got nervous. Like hell, he didn't get nervous. Of course we get nervous. We get nervous because we care. Like that's a good thing. Like you get up on stage to do a speech and you're not nervous. I don't think you really care about what you're doing. Like the fact that you've put that work in, you've put that effort in, the fact that there's a possibility that you could fail, that is what drives you to be great. So I've heard people say, embrace the suck, embrace the pain, embrace this, embrace that, embrace the nerves. Like that's what makes us great at the Olympics. That's what makes us great in sport. And that's what makes us great in all aspects of life. It's okay. It's not going to be perfect. And understanding that other people are just as nervous helped me so much. You can put up a front for me, like, oh, I'm yawning before I'm about to race. And oh, I feel like this. BS. I know you're nervous. I know you're feeling the same way I'm feeling. Now, for me to win, I've got to be able to conquer that, though. I got to be able to not have a brain fart, is what I like to call it, behind the blocks. I've got to know that when I get behind that blocks, I've done the work. I know that I'm taking a deep breath to bring my nervous system down because I'm feeling those nerves. I'm feeling everything, but I know you're feeling it too. So, okay, whatever. We're all feeling the same thing, but I'm going to win, not only just because I prepared, because I know we all prepared, but I'm going to win mentally because I know I'm prepared for this moment. I know how to conquer that. And so I think that confidence comes from understanding that anybody in that position would be nervous and being able to work at that mental piece of saying, I'm going to push through. Because Michael, for example, yeah, were they all gold? No. But he touched the wall after the 100 fly or 2 fly in 2008. And they were like, oh my God, Michael, you're going, this is like your 6th medal and you're doing great. And he goes, man, I messed up that turn. I just wish I did. And she was sitting there. She's like, wait, what? You just got a gold medal. And he's like, yeah, I know, but like, I missed. And that's to me, the epitome of a champion. Because even when you win, there's things you can do to get better. And there's things that if I just did this, like that is like, it stuck with me when I heard him say that. And I was like, okay, you can be happy, never satisfied. Be happy, never satisfied. Yeah. And so I take that into work. I take that into my fitness goals with myself. I'm like, okay, I mean, I'm close to the rock, but I'm not there yet. I got to work out more. Like I'm happy, I'm blessed, but I'm not satisfied. I'm going to keep trying to get better, 1% every day. I'm going to try to do it. And I think that that's what keeps you motivated. That's what keeps you healthy because you always have something that you've got your eye on.
Yeah, I love that. Happy but never satisfied. That's good. Well, last couple of things here real quick. Since you've mentioned it a couple of times, Michael Phelps, and it might be the same thing that you just said, but what do you feel like is the biggest lesson that you've learned from being around him over the years?
Being relentless. Like he's one of those people that when he's around the pool, also when to turn it off. I think that's another big one, is when to turn it off. When he's not in the pool, you can find him playing cards, or you can find him playing video games, and that's why I think we were so close on teams, was that we just did the same things. Like, we were just, when we weren't swimming, we were just disengaged completely. Like, it's like Fight Club. You don't talk about Fight Club. Like, if you're not swimming, you don't talk about swimming. But then when you watched him, or you watched Ryan Lochte, and I'll say this about Caleb, and I'll say this about Katie Ledecky for sure. Like, you'll see them and they're away from the sport and they're just normal people. And then when they go near a pool, they put their PhD on. They are like fluid, scientists. Like, they understand fluid dynamics like no other. Like, you ask them a question and they're such students of the sport. So I would say being a student of the sport and understanding that, being relentless towards your goals, but also understanding that life is about balance, and that you can't just stick to just thinking about that. You have to have that mental break. And I think that that's what kept him going for as long as kept him going. And I think that that's why he was so successful. He had a lot of balance in his life. And even when he didn't have full balance, he created balance.
Nice. That's awesome. That's awesome. Well, I mentioned, I gave a little sneak peek earlier about how you got into swimming was relatively ironic. I mean, from what I know, you learned to swim because you were rescued from a near drowning in Pennsylvania when you were 5 years old. You had to be fully resuscitated. So now you are an ambassador for Goldfish Swim School. So just talk to us about the importance of swim lessons for the youth. Like, what age should people start doing it? How long should kids do it for, and stuff like that? And it's kind of, somewhat timely for me. As I told you, time of this recording, I'm 9 days away from getting married. We probably won't have kids right away, but somewhat and maybe in the future here. But anyways, so to tell us about the kind of importance of getting swim lessons for the youth.
First off, congratulations. And also, take time with your partner. I think that was the best thing I did with my wife, was that, like, we had like 2 full years of just like us together, because when that child comes, oh boy, Avon is the jewel of both of our eyes, for sure. We love him to death, but I think that it helped us be better parents because we solidified that time together. But to answer your question, yes, at the age of 5, nearly drowning, I was an only child. My parents were very, very big pieces of my life, and my dad, a big mentor. Not just because he was 6'4" and I was small and he was just an imposing figure, but just, it was someone that I just looked up to. And so he wanted to get on the biggest ride there. I followed suit. Long story short, fully supervised. There was lifeguards there. I wasn't doing what I was not like horse playing. I was doing everything I was supposed to be doing. And I was still able to go down this ride, flip upside down, and have to be resuscitated. They say a child can have brain damage from being underwater for more than 30 seconds. And I was like 34, 35. But when I woke up, the first thing out of my mouth was, what's the next ride we're getting on? And, that doesn't happen for everyone. Unfortunately, there's so many drownings that happen in the US. And after 2008, USA Swimming Foundation put in front of me the drowning rates. And I started looking at that like from a deep lens. And I was like, wow, people of color at a much higher rate. The US in general is higher than most countries, whether that be because of backyard pools or open water, it doesn't matter. We as a US nation are drowning at an exponential rate. And so as a swimmer and as a person that nearly drowned, I'm like, okay, this is how I can give back to the sport. But the tie to Goldfish actually hit because of my son. One, because I tried to teach him and I realized very quickly, I am not one. I can teach anyone's kid, or I can teach an adult. I can, but my kid, I can't do it. Like, I'm fun dad and I want to stay fun dad. So I knew I needed to find a place that, one, I could trust him to learn and to actually excel in the pool. I wasn't interested in paying for something that wasn't going to see results. And as an athlete, I guess you could assume I had high expectations. And it was my first time. And to answer your question, when is a good time? Guardians, parents out there, 6 months, get them in the pool. You don't want them to have a negative experience. My son has never had a real negative experience around water. He's had some, like, he's gotten nervous, which is fine as long as he's supervised, which he's always supervised. But we want to make sure that we're getting them in at a young age. At 6 months, my son was in the water. I was, singing Wheels on the Bus, just kind of putting him in the water, making him like just feel it. And I don't know if it backfired, because now it's every day. Like, Daddy, we going swimming? Daddy, we going swimming? Because kids love it. They all love to be in the water. So I think the reason for Goldfish was a natural tie-in. It wasn't because like, oh, I'm an Olympian and I want a sponsor. No, it was, I'm a Goldfish dad first. I'm watching my son excel, and I'm looking at the curriculum that Goldfish has, and I'm like, oh yeah, this makes sense, because I've been coaching since I was 15. And I'm looking at the curriculum, and I'm looking at how they built it out, and I'm like, oh yeah, this is a swimmer that put this together. And of course, Jenny McQuiston swam for Arizona, swimmer. I'm like, okay, I can get behind this. This all makes sense. And honestly, Nick, to see my son's progression, even in a short bursts of time, it's amazing. And so immediately there was just synergy there. They were like, would you be an ambassador? And I'm like, yeah. And now here I am, year 3 of an ambassadorship with Goldfish. And I just get to talk to other dads and say, look, this is not only an amazing place, but this is a life skill, and we got to get our kids to learn as well.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Yeah. I mean, it is. I mean, it's just one of the most, probably I would argue, like one of the most preventable things that you can actually take action on, when it comes to, unfortunate deaths at a young age. Is like, if you can just get your kids in the water, that's absolutely critical. Is there any other like piece of advice that you would have for parents going into it besides, get them in at 6 months, try not to let them have a negative experience, maybe like obviously get with people who actually know what they're doing? Any other thing that you would say around that?
Yes, please do not believe that uncle that says, "Oh, you just jump in and it's a life skill. You'll just figure it out." No, we do not. We do not advocate for that. Go find professional lessons. I highly recommend Goldfish as the standard, as the gold standard. No pun intended, but the gold standard of when it comes to learning to swim, because I've seen it, and as an Olympian, I know why it works. But every parent out there, swimming is a life skill. I grew up swimming for a Jewish community center, in the Jewish faith. Learn to walk, learn to talk, learn to swim, learn to get, as a father, you have to get your child a job. You have to help with all of these things. And this is a part of it. And part of the culture is to learn to swim. We need to embrace that across the country, as our own mantra as we are developing these young people, that swimming is a life skill and we need to teach these kids to learn to swim. So I'm doing it with Goldfish, and I'm seeing massive results. I'm seeing my son, the confidence now that he's in kindergarten that he has when he goes to practice. I see the difference in him. He just stands a little taller now that he's got that confidence in swimming. And if he's a swimmer or not, I don't care. I just want him to do a sport. That's my only goal. I want a sport. And at the end of the day, I want him to be happy, but he's got to learn to swim.
Yeah. Well, and honestly, like one of the things I hadn't thought about until you were just kind of saying it is, if you're getting them in the water at 6 months, it's really one of the first times in their life that they have the ability to like see improvement or feel improvement and get some sort of confidence from progress. And so I think that is also probably a massive thing, because, while maybe you don't call it a sport at that age because they're really not necessarily doing that much or competing, if you will, there's still a sense of progress. And there's like really not any other sport or necessarily physical activity that you're doing at that age where you can get that sense of progress and sense of confidence from. So that's cool too.
Absolutely. You nailed it right on the head. I think it's wild to see him now, and he's so competitive. And I'm like, maybe he just got that from me, but I do think it's like he's fallen in love with the process, because we started him at such a young age. He saw that he was getting better. He put his face in the water at like 1 and had no problem. He knows how to put his hands and do doggy paddle and kick his feet. And so, yeah, I think each touch point that he was able to get to in his progress has really formed him as, a little human right now.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's awesome. That's awesome. Well, Cullen, this has been an absolute blast, man. Anytime I've had the opportunity to speak to a few Olympians in the past and just being able to dig into your brain about your experiences and the mindset that it takes and the grind that it took, the being relentless, all the preparation that it took, the attention to detail. We talked on so many different things today, and I know a lot of people are absolutely jacked up and fired up from the interview now and feel like they probably learned a lot as well. So I really appreciate your time. You guys need to make sure you go follow Cullen on social media. You can follow him at Cullen Jones on Instagram. You should also go follow Goldfish Swim School, which is at Goldfish Swim School as well, especially if you're a parent of a young child anywhere, starting at 6 months years old. You can get them in the water and get them building confidence in themselves. But is there any other good place that people should go learn more about you or follow you and support you?
Definitely TikTok. I Cullen Jones 41. But yeah, and I'm very responsive on social. So just, hit me up, say something in the DMs, and then I can definitely help guide you in any direction. I had so many parents asking questions when it comes to getting their kids water safe or even just being an athlete. So don't be afraid to ask questions. I'm always happy to answer.
Awesome, man. Well, you're the man, Cullen. I really appreciate it. I know so many people got a ton of value. You guys make sure you share this episode with a friend and family member, anybody who's an athlete or anybody who's looking to improve. Send them this episode. I know they're going to absolutely love it. If you're watching on YouTube, make sure you like and subscribe to the page as well. If you're listening on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, make sure you hit that follow button as well. But Cullen, absolute honor and joy meeting you today, man. Really appreciate you making the time to do so.
I really appreciate you having me, Nick. This was a lot of fun.
Cullen Jones shared his inspiring journey from training as an elite athlete to winning Olympic gold. Honestly, the main piece of value from today's conversation was understanding the mindset and dedication that it takes to become the best in the world at something and how you can apply those same principles in your own life. Before we wrap up today, don't forget to hit the follow button if you're listening on Apple Podcasts or on Spotify. And if you're watching on YouTube, don't forget to hit like and subscribe down below so that you guys never miss an episode jam-packed with value. Today, here are my 3 biggest takeaways. Number 1, be relentless. Know your goals and relentlessly pursue them. Cullen wasn't good at swimming immediately. It took time. It took practicing 8 times a week, 2 hours in the pool, and each practice, plus weight training and rehab. Hard work day in and day out is what it takes. Number 2, preparation breeds success and confidence. He talked about how belief and confidence comes from your preparation. He talks about how many times you have practiced will determine your confidence level when you step into the metaphorical arena, the ring, or you dive into the pool. And then third and finally, brain off, brain on. Cullen talked about how his coach used to say that, brain off, brain on, and he talked about the importance of the attention to detail in each and every practice. He said when they warmed up, the detail didn't really matter as much just when you're warming up, but then when you get into practice mode, that brain need to be turned on. You need to pay attention to every small thing because the margin of error, especially when you're becoming the best in the world, is so small. If you can do these things and practically apply these tips into your own life, you'll continue to get closer to the healthiest version of yourself and ultimately get closer and closer to your best you.